4 million are thought to have died between 1998 and 2008, including around 70,000 Pygmies killed during a savage extermination program carried out by the Movement for the Liberation of Congo and Rally for Congolese Democracy. The Bambuti Pygmies were targeted because they were thought to be subhuman and that their flesh contained magical properties. As if this story couldn't get any darker, well, yeah, that's where cannibalism came in.
This is a book called Volume 2, Africa, From the Sahara to the Zambezi, by the Danbury Press. And this is about the Pygmies in Congo Basin. Now these are the Pygmies. These are those short, shanked black men. Remember, Israel went into all nations. We went into the nations of the giants, the Philistines, and we went into the nations of the dwarves, of the Pygmies, Congo and so forth. Down here it says socially and physically with the distinctive physique and the light camouflaging skin color, the Pygmies are extraordinary, well suited to the equatorial forest life. Not only can they survive in an environment which others would find oppressive and harsh, they actually flourish in it. For the Pygmy hunters, the forest is a warm... Here are the Pygmies. It says Pygmy groups from the forest and often attracted to riverside Bantu settlements where celebrations like this cattle dance are held. Let's go over here and finish the sentence. It said, warm, rich, friendly place where they can live long, healthy lives in peace and comfort. It says, the Pygmy forest people have many different names and speak widely different both Sudanic and Bantu languages. So Bantu, there was a lot of Israelites who came from the Bantu peoples of the Congo Basin. Let's start here. This is page 96. And let's start here. In 1945 and 6 appeared the controversial study of Belgian missionary Father Plackite Temple's Bantu philosophy. The first work to give the clue of the Bantu concept of being. This concept centered on the idea of the vital force of Natu, the creative essence of everything in the natural world, alive and dead. This combined both physical and spiritual energy. At its head is the Supreme Being, Yahweh. The Supreme Being is linked through clan ancestors to individual beings. Muntu, the singular form of Bantu, which are in turn linked to the lesser organisms, including the inanimate trees, rocks, streams, for example. They're the protectors. Being is also susceptible to change, depending on the benefit of the malevolent operation of superior vital forces. Supreme happiness is the possession of the greatest vital force. Every illness, wound, suffering, or injustice is held to reduce the vital force and result from the activity of some external agent who possess superior vital force. See that? To the Bantu, every individual forms link in a chain of vital forces. These are the Jews. Let's drop down. In 1482, Portuguese traders entered the estuary of the Congo River. They found themselves in one of the largest kingdoms in Africa at that time. In other words, the white men did not go into that area. But Congo, the kingdom, was founded in the late 14th or early 15th century, probably by migrating Bantu groups from the Luba region of Katanga. It was large, 2.5 million was the estimate of a 17th century missionary. The king, the Manekongo, ruled through a hierarchy of chiefs and sub-chiefs. The outlying states acknowledged his sovereignty, collected his taxes, and were otherwise left to rule as they wished. So the missionaries went into Luango. The three largest northern states were the Nagoyo, Kakongo, and Luango states, which from our studies, you should already know that Luango and Kakongo were filled with Jews. In 1490, missionaries were sent to Congo with smiths, carpenters, and other skilled artisans. The Mani-Congo and several other ruling families were converted to what? Christianity. And the capital was rebuilt in stone. A few young Congolese were sent to Europe to be educated, and one baptized Alfonso ruled the kingdom from 1507 to 1543. He wished to model it on the lines of Western European kingdoms. There's always that greed. But now the slave trade began to dominate Portuguese thinking. So this is what happened. There had always been internal slavery in the Congo. I'll read this and I'll finish. Congo Kingdom. But the Portuguese needed plantation slaves for Brazil. Ruthless administrators trained and armed African brigades to foray for slaves. The southern provinces were the worst affected. In the 17th century, the Mani-Congos, all devout Catholics, see that? That's dealing with those saints who raised the dead. They came and massacred these areas. All devout Catholics appealed to Rome for help. Stern letters passed from the Vatican to Lisbon. See that? That's where more Jews were. And were largely ignored. In 1660, the Congo turned to war and inevitably lost. Why did they turn to war? Because they knew that Catholics were the devils. That's why. That's what happened. The Portuguese and their African allies broke the power of the Mani-Congos. See, the Portuguese paid traders of the Bantu people to fight against the Mani-Congos, just like they did over here in the Americas with the Buffalo Soldiers and the Cherokee Indians. Outlying states broke away rival dynasties, competed for power, and missionary contact completely broke down. Soon Christianity was forgotten, and the Congo Kingdom had shriveled to a few villages around San Salvador. Inland, the Bantu sometimes fared better. By the 17th century, the Lunda Luba Kingdom covered a large area of the present southeastern Congo, western Angola, and northern Zambia, and grew powerful. Power came from the gunpowder and guns they brought from the Portuguese of the Zambesi in return for ivory. So they made it into a corporation. They turned Africa out. They brought in diseases like gonorrhea. And that's why these sisters got paint on their face for their shameness. Look, it says, the night before this picture was taken, these Bakali women from the Nagon River, Gabon, made medicine of adobras bark and pieces of intestines to forestall the evil spirits that had brought barrenness to the tribe, mostly through gonorrhea. So what you need to do is ask, how did they get this? A lot of the diseases came from the missionaries that came out of Europe, out of America. They slept around with so many women that they gave them gonorrhea, different bacteria. It's possible that these three women possibly slept with the same person that came from another continent. And they're doing the same thing today. Now it's in the form of injections. They're injecting the people in Africa with diseases like AIDS and cancer and things of that nature. But they were doing it then through the spread of sex. And those men who were filthy laid with our women. In order for gonorrhea to spread, these men were laying not just with one woman, they were laying with multiple women. Their sexual appetite just spread all over the place when the Catholics came down. So this is the thing that the Catholics were doing. This is the things that you do not hear about, talking about they raised 800 people from the dead. That's where Matthew 24 and 26 was talking about. Don't believe it. You've been warned. If these different doctrines go around the world, they're not doing it in the name of the Hamashiach. They're doing it in the name of the devil. So check this out. This is a book called The Lost Tribes of Israel, The History of a Myth by Tudor Parfit. And this book was published in Great Britain in 2002. But I'm going to this book because I want to show you something about how he said only in Portugal they are known for being black. We're going to go to page 173. Now, we talked about Guinea in Shakespeare and the Jews, but this is New Guinea. Now, New Guinea is located in Australia. Get that understanding. Guinea is in Africa, for those of you who don't know topography. Guinea is in Africa, and New Guinea is in Australia. So he says here on page 174, he stressed the similarities of customs, religions, as well as physical appearance. The likeness of the white Hebrew race is remarkable. The one great difference being in the New Guinea specimen of the 12 tribes are what? Are black. Among them are to be found many albinos. So this is what he was saying. Those in Germany were not like the ones in Portugal, because this statement tells you within the mix of Israel, of the 12 tribes of Israel, of Negroes and Indigenous Indians, occasionally you will find albino Israelites, which is a very light shade. And you could consider almost mulattoes to that point, being close to albinos, right? And mulattoes vary in shade of color and hair. Look at Malcolm X, he had red hair, all right? So even in mulattoes, the shade of brown dissipates. This is number 5 on page 38. As for the processes of amalgamation with native tribes, through which even so strong a type as the Israelitish would largely become indistinct, this is what happened in 70 AD. We can easily think of the wholesale slaughter of the male population in the defense of their homes, as in later slave raiding times. As in Europe and Asia, these invasions often resulted in the extermination of the male population. So it would be in Africa. Superior weapons and physical strength, as in the slave raids referred to, would inevitably prevail. They were running from who? The Romans. The only natives escaping would be bands and fragments of tribes, which, as we have seen in the case of the Bushmen and Hottentots, were pushed out of its course as the wave of migration advanced. The younger natives, women, would become members of the household, and the resulting race of mixed bloods would spread as the invaders of Western Europe in latter times throughout the length and breadth of the land. This is when we ran into Africa. We had been fighting for over 1,500 years in Africa. It is not an unknown thing that the Hebrew type should be scattered to regions far remote. I read it again. It is not an unknown thing that the Hebrew type should be scattered to regions far remote and become commingled with native stock. Captain Webster finds today in the Papuans of the Admiralty Islands, I may be butchering that, but this is in the islands near Australia, all the Papua New Guinea. Strong Hebraic features, very prominent. See that? So concerning the Bantu, I want to take you to this book to prove to you they are also Hebrews. This is a book called The Land of the Heart of Livingstone, or The Genius of the Bantu, by Reverend N.B. Gormley, A.M. This was published in 1920, down at the bottom. And, it's sad to say that all this evidence comes out and people still doubt the fact that those who were a part of the transatlantic slave trade that came to the Americas were Jews, not just Negroes or African Americans. They were actual Jews, all right? By the percentages, they were all Jews. And which they fit the prophecy of Deuteronomy 28 completely, especially the last verse, verse 68, where they would be taken on ships. But sadly to say, there are people still out there who just don't want to admit that the Negroes who are scattered in the Americas, North, Central, and South, are Israelites. Even in the islands, we're Israelites, pursuant to Isaiah 11:11. Even in Europe, we were there before, are Israelites. All right. So people have to get grips with themselves. I mean, this is really about the children of Israel who are scattered abroad. That's why the world is out of course. It's a giant ball of confusion because the children of Israel do not know who they are. They will not return back to their Father in heaven. And that's why people are going to be caught off guard by storm. All right. Let's go to page 76. All this information. How can you deny it? Chapter 8. Education, Heathen. The Nagoma School. The rite of circumcision is practiced among what? The Bantu. A youth not being accounted a man until he has passed the ordeal, which is the age of 12. We are informed that one tribe near the Congo River observes the same usage as the Hebrews with respect to the age, example, infancy. From infancy. In most tribes, the rite is performed at the beginning of adolescence. We do not enter into the reasons for the continuance of the rite, because this is their heritage. This is what they know, which evidently comes down from earliest times. Local customs vary somewhat from tribe to tribe because it was oral. Likewise, the extent to which evil is indulged during the feasts, which are held at the close of the period of seclusion in the Nagoma schools. But in the main feature, usage seems to be quite uniform among the various tribes. A body of tradition.
This is the word of the Lord of hosts. I took you from the pastures and from following the sheep to be prince over my people Israel. I have been with you wherever you have gone and have destroyed all the enemies in your path. I will make you a great name among the great ones of the earth. I will assign a place for my people in Israel. There I will plant them, and they shall dwell in their own land.